Okay, I am now recording. It's like a legal thing, I have to say that. So natural resources, and actually I'll just like get out my little stump or my soapbox and get up on it like the Lorax, because I think it's important to touch base with everybody on the big picture of like what we're doing and why we're doing it. Hey T, what's up? Just so you know, I'm recording. Not going to share it publicly. So that's what I want to do for 5 minutes. And if I don't set a timer, I will totally ramble forever. So I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. And we'll see if I can make coherent thoughts happen after 4 Zooms. Okay, so natural resources is the study of like the things that we get from nature that provide us with our economic, lifestyles and just everything, right? So we can think about the trees that we get through forestry that provide things like paper, lumber, and we can think about energy that is supplied through hydropower or even like from mining uranium for nuclear power, right? Which is really just steam. It's really just for making steam. I love that about nuclear. But seriously, we're just getting steam to turn an engine? Yes. Or a turbine. Anyway, so that's a little bit of a tangent. Bring it back, Q. Bring it back. So our essential question for this particular natural resources class is how can we make sustainable and informed choices? So the reason why I think this class is really cool beyond like a biology or even environmental science is that there's a really tangible like application of the stuff that we do in here. So that ranges from like literal job skills. So if you applied for something for DNR, Department of Natural Resources, hey, Amy, I'm recording just so you know, or Department of Ecology or Fish and Wildlife, like having had taken this course is huge in terms of your background and your resume. And then also just knowing things like how you take DBH on a tree is legit. Like you drop that in the interview for DNR, they'll be like, what? Anyway, so I know that that's a step process and you probably start like at the low rung and then work your way up. No, tangent, I'm tangenting. Okay, so the reason why we're doing the this or that question is so that you can start thinking about the complexity of an everyday choice. And yes, you're going specific on one thing, like is using a pen better than a pencil, but you end up thinking about the entire system that creates these two things, including the extraction of the natural resource, the shipping of the products, the selling of the products, and then the eventual disposal of it, or potentially recycling. So I think that it was illuminating to the complex process that is responsible for creating everything in our lives. And it's explicitly tied to our use of natural resources. So we were looking at Haiti versus the Dominican Republic on Monday. And that's just one example of many for how important it is to manage for your natural resources. And in this case, particularly trees. So this book, I know I talked about it before, Collapse by Jared Diamond, is all about the success or the failure of civilizations. He talked about other stuff like social pressures, not just natural resources, but from what I got out of it, it hinges on how people manage the natural resources like agriculture and water, but really it's all about trees. It's mostly about trees, right? So there's a really great lesson about the, and soil. So there's a really great lesson about the Norse, like the Nordic people who went and colonized, or sorry, tried to establish a settlement on Greenland. If you know anything about Greenland, it's like covered in ice, and they failed. They failed because they just tried to do their same practices with sheep grazing. They overgrazed. They like cut up grass sod to put on their roofs to stay warm in the winter, and they wouldn't eat seals. Meanwhile, there was definitely an Inuit population that was migrating that would come into Greenland and actually interact with the Norse occasionally, and totally were successful as a civilization. And the Norse civilization failed. In fact, they were starving to death near the end and ate their dogs, which they loved as pets, as we do. So that's how badly they failed. Similar story with the Easter Islanders. I know I talked about them briefly last week, but they also deforested their entire island. And I'm sure you're familiar with the statues. And actually one of the reasons why they deforested it is not just for fuel, but also so that they could erect these large stone statues. So it was a little bit tied to cultural practices. And these are really cool and really epic, and it was a pretty amazing civilization, but ultimately was not successful. And towards the end, there was definitely European diseases that helped to like almost decimate. There's actually a handful of native Easter Islanders still around. And their story about Polynesians actually settling distant islands is really cool. It's almost like star travel, like equivalent to star travel because it was so far away. Rambling. So the point is managing our natural resources is super important, and making these decisions between this or that every day, 4 seconds left, is really awesome. And I'm excited for you guys to be delving into that research through your quest. So yeah, that's my spiel. And I'm gonna go ahead and just stop that recording.